You're tuned to Radio Big.
Let's go!
You want to know what I miss? The Xbox original PlayStation 2 era of console gaming that held a generation of gamers in front of their family TVs playing nothing but racing games and extreme sports. Whether that be behind the wheel of a car getting chased by the cops in a Mark III BMW GTR, or on the freezing slopes competing on EA Big's SSX championships. It was an era of gaming that I don't think we will ever see again, and I feel will forever be one of those moments in gaming culture that will always be looked back on as something I at least wished came back. Now, that's not to say developers haven't tried to bring it back in the modern era. In fact, I'm sure you could name off a few games that you feel give off that same vibe we still felt long ago. But I feel there are many pieces that the modern equivalents lack that the 5th, 6th, and 7th generation had, and one of those things I'd like to highlight is music. A game can only do so much when it comes to immersion, but the thing every person can remember, no matter what game they've played, is the feeling the soundtrack gives them. No two games sound the same unless, of course, they happen to be in the same subgenre or franchise. And even then, those games could be very different from their previous and newer counterparts. For example, no two Need for Speeds will sound exactly the same depending on time between one another. An example would be Underground 2 and Most Wanted. Although released around the same time, each game's soundtrack gives a completely different vibe and feel to their respective games. Underground 2 gives the feeling of driving late at night in the city, ready to pull up to a car meet.
Patrol members be advised. A street racer has just been reported eastbound past Diamond Park, requesting units to head up.
Any more details on that call?
Suspect is in a silver BMW.
While Most Wanted feels robotic and heavy, like you're being chased through the suburbs, and at any second you could find yourself being put in a police box or losing your car to one of the racers on the blackboard. I feel this exact change in soundtracks heavily contributed to the distinction that each game used to have. If you were being tested and all you had was the music to differentiate these games, you would most likely pass with flying colors. However, in the modern era with pop music sounding the same and most other genres not getting as much representation as they used to in many games, it has heavily impacted the player's separation between games like NBA 2K and Forza. Another thing to take into account is most of these games don't play like arcade games anymore. If I had to pick a date when we shifted from arcade to realism, it would have to be somewhere in the 2010s, or the late era of the 7th generation of consoles. If we were to look at Blur and the Crew, for example, one game sold only 500,000 copies, while the other was able to ship 2 million units only a month after release. If that didn't make you decide what to prioritize your games on, I don't know what will. And because developers started to shift their games to look realistic, play realistic, and just be realistic, a lot of games started looking the same and sounding the same. If you want a game to play like Burnout or Just Set Radio, you can still find games like them, but it just requires looking harder and hoping an indie developer is or has made the game you've been craving to see reborn. Adding on, developers seem to have intentionally forgotten X-Game style sports. In fact, what once was a genre of games that required sister companies to work on the heavy load, such as Neversoft, EA Big, and Black Box, don't exist anymore, and have died out along with the games that they used to pioneer. I just wish games today didn't feel so corporatized. I wish they were able to bring back that feeling you got while racing your friends in the snowy mountains of the Rockies, driving down the streets of Midnight Club, or having a healthy competition against your friends in a game like Fusion Frenzy. I mean, while I've been editing this video, I keep getting chills down my spine every time I replay the intro, because man, does seeing those games with that music in the background just bring me back. And that's a feeling I wish I still had with games today. Maybe it's the lack of youthful wonder I once had when playing brand new games. What comes out now is just a recycled, regurgitated mess that companies just produce to try to keep a hook on the consumers they once had, with either recognizable figures from their past or just ghosts that existed prior. Maybe it's the nostalgic goggles blinding me, remembering of a simpler time when I could just come home from school, turn my PlayStation 2 on, and just sit there and play for who knows how long on my family CRT TV. But now that that's gone and I'm able to buy my own games, as opposed to the one game per holiday or birthday that I used to have to deal with, I've just lost it out of my own hubris. Whatever it is, I just wish I could find something that reignites that spark. It's not even sports games to begin with. I'm just sort of using them as like a model to talk about this. Because in reality, it's every game from my childhood I used to look at so fondly, and I still do. You could catch my friends, like, getting their ears talked off from me just talking about games like Sly Cooper, Ape Escape, and Kingdom Hearts. But most games nowadays do not reignite that same spark I once had. I miss that feeling of turning on a new game and just sitting there for hours on hours, being able to just play it nonstop, on loop, repeat, whatever. But I've sort of lost that. A lot of the times I'll come home and just turn the computer on and sit here, not knowing what to do, looking at Discord, waiting for someone to come online, just so I could find an excuse to play a game. Because most games nowadays just are alright. What happened to gaming? What happened to me? What happened to that exciting feeling that video games used to give? I miss them. I miss it. Where did it go?